Hello everyone, Michael here, thank you for joining me. So today we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is text neck, which is the lay term for the neck pain associated with sitting here on your phone. Does this sound like you? Picture this, you're scrolling through your phone, head tilted forwards, shoulders rounded, hunched over, and your eyes looking down at a glowing screen. It seems harmless, a way to relax, a way to switch off from the stress of the day and unwind. But in a short amount of time, you start to feel these dull aches around your neck and shoulders. This discomfort builds up, and before you know it, hours have been spent sitting there, scrolling, looking down at your phone for no particular purpose, just endless scrolling. This discomfort turns into actual pain and fatigue in the muscles around your neck and your shoulders. You might develop a headache, you might find your eyes feeling like you can't focus. And before you know it, hours have slipped away. And this is the silent epidemic of text neck. As an osteopath, I see on a daily basis the effects and the harm that excessive screen time causes to our necks, our bodies, and even our mental health. One of the issues I'm most concerned about is I'm seeing patients younger and younger presenting in practice, often 10, 11, 12 years of age, with chronic neck pain, and they're actually starting to show the early signs of arthritis. These are problems I used to only see in older patients, and it is completely and utterly preventable. In the UK, 71% of people check their phone within 5 minutes of waking. Teenagers spend an average of 7 to 9 hours on their phones every single day. And adults are not far behind them with over 5 hours spent on their phones per day. And this doesn't include all the times we spend on screens such as laptops, computers as part of our daily work life. This excessive amount of time on our phones is not just only reshaping the muscles around our spine, it's degenerating, it's accelerating the wear and tear. So what is text neck? Text neck is a popular lay term, and it encompasses this round on the shoulders, drop on the chest. It's the angle you would probably use to look down at your phones, and it's the associated pain, discomfort, and the accelerated wear and tear of your neck. It may start as just a little bit of stiffness around here, and to be honest, most people say they get discomfort around here, but it's worse than that. Discomfort leads to pain, and pain leads to wear and tear and degeneration. The good news is text neck and the accelerated wear and tear of the cervical spine is preventable and avoidable. I'm going to cover a lot of information, here's a lot of detail, bear with me to the end, I'm sure you'll find it enjoyable, so let's get right into it. So to deal with text neck, headaches, migraines, degeneration, arthritis of the cervical and thoracic spine, we first need to understand the biomechanics, what a healthy spine is, what's normal or what's not normal. Let's start with the head. Your head is actually extremely heavy. It weighs between 4.5 to 5 kilograms, roughly the weight of a bowling ball. With good posture, your head sits in a nice alignment with the head balancing over the shoulders. This allows for even distribution of force through all the cervical vertebra, and also for the muscles to hold your head in a nice central alignment. It's much more efficient to hold the head here. The muscles only need to flicker to hold your head still. With good posture, the head is balanced over the shoulders, distributing its weight evenly along the cervical spine, allowing the ligaments, discs, joints to function efficiently, and this minimizes the strain. However, when the head tilts forwards, even slightly, the load on the neck increases dramatically. With just a 15-degree tilt, your head weighing normally 4.5 to 5 kilograms, even at a 15-degree angle, the leverage changes and the relative load on the cervical spine, the disc and all the surrounding tissue increases to around 15 kilograms. When you tip your head at a 45-degree angle, the angle you use to look down into a phone, the pressure in your discs in your spine increases by over 300%, and the relative load of all the tissues in your neck, so the joints, the muscles, the discs, the ligaments, the tendons and so on, the load increases to 22 kilograms. This is the equivalent of carrying a 6-year-old child on your neck. At 60 degrees, that load becomes 5 times heavier. That's like taping a suitcase to your skull every time you check your phone. Now, if you're doing that for hours and hours a day, you're going to wear your neck out. It's normal to lean your head forwards, but not to do it for hours a day. And if you do, the muscles are going to become fatigued. Your body has to compensate, and you can end up with a bulge or a herniation, or the classic slip disc is where the disc material bulges and leaks, pressing on the nerves, which causes pain, numbness, tingling. Unchecked posture will over time cause other degenerative changes, such as arthritis in the neck, and degeneration such as a kyphosis, where the thoracic spine adapts and you end up with this kind of hunchback. But worse still, if you keep putting this pressure on the lower part of the neck, it will accelerate wear and tear, and you can end up with an irreversible Dowger's hump. So what seems like a simple habit of checking your phone, if done excessively, has long-term consequences. One of the most immediate and common symptoms of text neck or poor posture is persistent stiffness in your neck and your shoulders. These knots in your shoulders can compress the other parts of the neck, irritate the blood vessels and nerves around the base of the skull, causing radiations around the occiput, temple, around the eyes, causing tension headaches and migraines. Many headaches are directly linked to poor posture in your neck. Does this sound like you? Do you have knots in your shoulders? So as an osteopath, we can help relieve the tension around the neck and shoulders and help minimize headaches. But to really create long-term results, we have to give you exercises and look at a structured plan to actually correct the biomechanics for long-term improvement. If text neck and poor posture continues to be unresolved or worsens, which it typically does get worse if it's left unchecked, your symptoms may become more persistent and severe, and you may start getting pins and needles or radiations into the arms where you're starting to affect the discs and the nerve roots, and you're actually pinching the nerves in the spine. You may notice that the range of motion is decreased, and what I mean by that is how far you can turn the neck left and right. We should be able to turn our neck around about 180 degrees, so a full range of motion. However, as your posture goes forwards, the amount of range you have available in your neck decreases, and this can be very significant. We have people who are young and people even with severe arthritis, and one of the exercises we do, or one of the demonstrations we do, is I get people to stand in the best posture possible and I look at how far they can turn their neck. Then I tend to understand what feels natural for them, which is normally here, and the range of motion is normally decreased by at least 30%. Then we show that if it's unchecked and their posture gets worse, how little range of motion they have left and how painful this is. Try it yourself. Turn left and right and see how far you can look. Then adjust your posture, bring the shoulders back and the neck in line, and try to relax and look at how much more range you have. Also, if you do experience pain when you turn your head to the side, you will likely find as you stand taller, your neck discomfort decreases. If you already have arthritis of the neck, one of the things to bear in mind with arthritis of the cervical spine is the amount of friction and load you put through it. If you've got a forward head posture, creating more load on the neck, then you create this biomechanical restriction where when your head's forwards, you can't turn as far, it grinds the joints, it's going to hurt. So with arthritic patients, we have to work at changing the load of the neck to bring the head back and giving them the full range of motion, or as close to their potential full range of motion, even with arthritis. But when we talk about text neck and postural dysfunctions, we do tend to discuss the neck, discomfort in the disc, vertebra, and headaches and so on, but it also has a knock-on effect to all the shoulder biomechanics. When we stand like this and we move with a nice upright alignment, you have a very good range of motion in your shoulders. But what you find is, as the shoulder comes forwards, even a small amount, it changes the angle and the biomechanics of your shoulder and creates a shoulder impingement syndrome. You may notice yourself that as you bring the arm up, when you get to around about here, it becomes painful. Often, this will pinch the tendon and cause degeneration. So it may start as a rotator cuff tendonitis, but over time you get a tendinosis and bone spurs, and it can even lead to a frozen shoulder. And the reason it can lead to these problems is the angle has changed so that as the arm comes up, you compress the shoulder joint here. This friction creates degeneration, inflammation leads to degeneration. And if we do things to correct your postural alignment, the range of motion increases significantly and the amount of friction goes down in the arm. So if you get discomfort when you bring your arm to around 90 to 120 degrees, you are likely suffering with a shoulder impingement syndrome, all of which are directly related to text neck and shoulder position and general overall posture. Now the shoulder is an interesting joint. As we've stated, it's meant to align here. And there's many different parts of the shoulder. So you actually have joints here, 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 around the back, and it correlates with our thoracic spine. Now, the shoulder is a very interesting joint. It actually has a capsule around it, a loose capsule. It's kind of like a bag of fluid. All joints have capsules, so your knuckles do, your hip does, but in the shoulder, it has to have a loose part down here. If you imagine with my top, I have to have a loose bit here, or I wouldn't be able to lift my arm up. So if you keep getting mechanical dysfunctions and friction in the shoulder, i.e. from a shoulder impingement syndrome or forward head posture, it creates this friction, it causes inflammation. Now the inflammation will fall down and it can fall into the bottom of the capsule, and over time it can actually create a full adhesion. Once you have a full adhesion, you will not lift your arm up. It's literally stuck there. This is what we call an adhesive capsulitis, or you may know it as frozen shoulder. And when people are receiving treatment for frozen shoulder, it's very important to understand why the actual capsule got an adhesion. Why did it get stuck together to not allow you to bring the arm up? If you have a cortisone injection, this is not going to create any long-term recovery because the dysfunction will still be there. You have to correct that, because once the adhesion has been separated, you're going to just create more friction, more inflammation, and it will stick back together again. For all shoulder problems, rotator cuff tendonitis, adhesive capsulitis, frozen shoulder and so on, we need to look at the biomechanics of the shoulder, because once you've calmed the inflammation, or for a frozen shoulder, separated the adhesion, you need to restore normal biomechanics, because otherwise over time the friction will return and you'll create accelerated wear and tear, you'll create inflammation, and you'll end up with the same problem back again. Text neck and other dysfunctions of posture are very concerning when you see someone young. 10 and 12-year-olds now spend a lot of time on their phones. This is a new problem. But this excessive amount of time bent forwards is reshaping how our bodies grow. Think of it like a tree growing wonky. You do not want someone to go through the stage of adolescence into adulthood, spending their whole time there. The vertebra will literally adapt during that growing phase. So if these problems are persistent and left unchecked, they lead to long-term complications and pain and suffering in adult life, which is completely preventable. As an osteopath, we often look at the biomechanics of the neck, and we understand that excessive screen time use, particularly our phones, is causing lots of musculoskeletal problems and are completely preventable. But research shows excessive screen time has profound psychological impacts, affecting our mental and emotional well-being in ways we are only beginning to understand. One of the strange and new behaviours to emerge is what we call doom scrolling, the compulsive habit of scrolling through online content. It typically begins as a quick scroll for updates, but it can spiral into hours of anxious scrolling. Research shows that it heightens a stress and anxiety response, and at the same time a compulsion to do further additional doom scrolling. Social media platforms know this. They want their content to be engaging and addictive, with often idealized presentations of attractiveness, wealth and beauty, which for most people are completely unattainable. Research published in Health Psychology illustrates this is particularly damaging to younger users, who often compare their real lives to the polished, highlighted versions you see online, giving a false and unrealistic view of the world and the people they aspire to be like. The relentless influx of notifications, ping, 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 notification here, notification there, is unrelenting, combined with rapid short-fire content and constant multitasking, conditions the brain to operate in a state of continuous partial attention, is halting our ability to concentrate. Published research has shown that excessive screen time, particularly in teenagers, has been linked with an association of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. Although the psychological effects of doom scrolling is more prominent in teenagers, adults aren't far behind them, with many experiencing symptoms of low levels of stress, chronic anxiety, compulsion to keep looking at more and more content. They literally become addicted to their phones, and they find that their sleep's affected and they're generally suffering with the symptoms which mimic ADHD. Excessive screen time can create a negative feedback loop. Poor mental health, driven by excessive screen use, makes the individual more likely to turn to the same devices which are causing the problem for distraction, comfort or an escape and a way to unwind. This over-reliance on our screens, our technology, our phones becomes a real physical, mental and emotional addiction, which unless you are consciously trying to avoid and constantly trying to break without intentional effort. It's very clear by the psychological literature that the effects of excessive screen use is harming people. I explain to my patients that the human body was designed to move. Yet the number one place we work from is at a computer, a sedentary lifestyle. And with working at home and the amount of time we spend in one position has gone up and up and up. Now we spend most of our time in a state of near constant inactivity, and then we go to bed. Gone are the days we used to be physically active to earn a living or to farm to get our food. The number one workplace is at a computer station, and it's now so even worse because we spend most of it at home. At least we had to walk to the train station and get the bus and walk up the stairs. But now most people have to walk around 10 steps to get to their office. So we go to sleep at night, and then during our waking days we spend most of it in a near constant state of inactivity. There are many metabolic and cardiovascular risks documented with sedentary behaviours. Prolonged sitting reduces calorific expenditure and slows your metabolism, which makes it very easy to gain weight, and excessive weight is linked to a number of negative health outcomes and leaves you at risk of insulin resistance and the development of type 2 diabetes. So when you consider prolonged sitting not only slows our metabolic rate, it decreases calorific expenditure, it also increases your likeliness to develop a snacking behaviour, a habit of snacking, which are normally calorie dense, tasty and delicious, but very bad for you, calorifically dense foods. Prolonged sitting has been shown to increase your risk of developing high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. When our body remains stationary for extended periods, circulation slows, leading to reduced blood flow throughout your body. This phenomenon, known as venous stasis, increases the likelihood of developing blood clots and potentially developing a life-threatening condition such as deep vein thrombosis. Recent publications have shown that those that sit for 6 hours per day in a normal work life are a significantly higher risk of developing all forms of cardiovascular disease. And it's been shown that even those exercise outside of work, if they are spending prolonged periods of time sitting, this exercise outside of work does not undo the harm of sitting for long periods. You cannot out-exercise prolonged periods of sitting. As I emphasise with my patients, you cannot undo the harm of sitting all day at work just by going to the gym afterwards. Although exercising after prolonged periods of sitting helps, you must have plenty of movement throughout your day. You must break up these long periods of prolonged sitting. Short, regular breaks to stand up, stretch or walk can dramatically improve circulation and encourage muscles to engage, which helps you maintain a healthy metabolic rate. Simple adjustments such as standing desks, frequent movement breaks, walking 10,000 steps a day. Yes, I think 10,000 steps a day for most people is a very good goal. Mindful eating, avoiding snacking, all collectively make a significant difference. Therefore, you must break up these prolonged periods of sitting and incorporate a lifestyle that prioritises movement in our sedentary world. Long periods of time staring at computers and our phones, this prolonged focus, is linked to digital eye strain, or more commonly known as computer vision syndrome. It typically presents as symptoms such as dry eyes, blurred vision, eye fatigue, worsening eyesight, and headaches. Unlike the outside world, where as you walk you're constantly adjusting your vision, you're adjusting your focal range depending on whether you're looking at the floor, a distant object, and when you stare only at a screen instead of the outside world, you're not having to make these adjustments of your vision. This overloads the ciliary muscles of the eye, particularly when accompanied by poor lighting, glare, or the wrong screen resolution. And research shows that spending 2 hours or more puts you at a very high risk. Children and adolescents are particularly vulnerable. Their developing visual and neurological systems are not equipped to handle the sustained demands of screen use, so they're more likely to develop myopia or nearsightedness, which requires glasses. Blue light exposure adds another challenge. The blue wavelengths emitted by digital screens are known to suppress the production of melatonin. This is the hormone which regulates our sleep-wake cycle, and this is one of the reasons why screen use in bed is so detrimental to sleep. When that bright light hits your eyes, melatonin, your sleep hormone, the production of that decreases. So what is your likeliness of going into a deep, restful sleep? When the light from screens hits your eyes, particularly in your bed, melatonin, that sleep hormone, the production of that goes down. You shouldn't use your phones or screens in bed, or at least a few hours before you go to sleep. Anyone who has chronic poor sleep needs to make the bedroom a screen-free place. To To help mitigate some of the effects of digital eye strain, I recommend the 20-20-20 rule. It's fantastic, particularly for people that work at a computer. What you do is every 20 minutes, you need to set a timer for this. Every 20 minutes, you look at an object 20 feet away for 20 seconds. 20-20-20. Every 20 minutes, 20 feet away for 20 seconds, every 20 minutes. Staring at one place, one screen, one distance will cause problems over time, so you need to break that up with looking at things further away. So try the 20-20-20 rule for yourself and let us know how much better you're feeling. Do you ever catch yourself mindlessly scrolling on your phone for long periods of time and you've lost minutes or even hours? Or do you find that your sleep's disrupted? If so, it's very important to have dedicated phone-free, screen-free, tech-free zones. So one would be the bedroom and the dining room. It's a great place to start. I encourage my patients to have these digital detoxes, to have phone-free zones, to get in the habit of putting their phone down and not looking at it, silencing a lot of notifications. Definitely have phone-free zones in the bedroom and the dining room. You do not want your bedroom illuminated by this little glowing light disrupting your sleep. And dinner should be a place where you can mindfully enjoy your food and engage with your family around you. Being mindful of excessive phone use, putting your phone down and having dedicated phone-free zones have been shown to be very helpful.